going to get started. My name is Cindy Suffa, and I'm the publisher of the Idaho Business Review, and I want to welcome you to the very first breakfast series in 2025. I know some people feel like it's been a really long year already, but AI in the workforce is what we're kicking it off with, and you are in for a treat today. We are so glad you're starting your day with us. Idaho Business Review, Mark Lutz, has lined up an excellent panel here to my left, and they will be providing their insight and expertise in today's topic, and you'll be introduced to them momentarily. But first, the breakfast series would not be possible without the support of our 2025 program sponsors. I'd like to recognize our series presenting sponsor, Hawley Troxell. Hawley Troxell is Idaho's premier law firm. Let's give them a round of applause. They are well represented today here back in the corner. I'd also like to thank our supporting sponsor, Bank of America. Thank you for your support. And I have to show appreciation to the Hemlock at the Inn at 500 for partnering with the Idaho Business Review on today's event. Hemlock at Inn at 500 Capitol is the perfect place in downtown Boise to host your next banquet, meeting, or wedding reception. We have packed the house today. Martine and her team will take great care of you. Matt is with AV. He's back here in the corner, and he's been amazing. So thank you, Matt. Also, watch for the grand opening of Hemlock downstairs, right where Richards is, right downstairs, former location of Richards, and that will be opening in May. So stay tuned for that. Before I turn it over to editor Mark Lutz, I want to inform you that today's event is being recorded by videographer Mike DiDonato. Mike is with the Better Business Bureau, and we are grateful for their support in having you with us today, Mike. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to welcome Idaho Business Review editor Mark Lutz to introduce our panel this morning. Thank you.
Can AI fix that? Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Lutz. I'm the editor of the Idaho Business Review. This is, as Cindy said, a packed house. This is wonderful to see. I'm glad to see everyone here. This is an important topic. We had our Forum on the Future last month, and one quote that constantly comes back from Jeremy Barber at HC Company, he said, "We're going to be talking about AI every 30 minutes. He wasn't lying. It seems to be constant. Back in 2017, I know a long time ago, there was a news article, and you can still read it on The Atlantic. Facebook was working with AI, as most were probably doing in its infancy in a sense. And the modules that they had created, and some of you might remember this, started speaking to each other but creating their own language. And they promptly shut it down. And I thought, well, that's the end of the rise of the robots. We're safe. We're all good. And then it didn't seem to be anything. You didn't seem to hear anything. And then all of a sudden, at the end of last year, seemingly exploded out of nowhere. And we started hearing about it more and more. Personally, my email, every day I have at least 5 different emails from different news agencies or PR agencies. AI is doing this. What about this with AI? Here's DeepSeek now. Here's this one and that one and all these, and they're making moves. And it's constant. It's a barrage. Our company alone said, here's what we would like to do with AI. We've got a committee for it. And suddenly we're integrating it into journalism. The dark side of that, there's a radio station in Alaska where I used to live where the owner of the radio station fired all of his news staff and replaced it all with AI. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay right in what we're doing. We need that human element. So it is here, and it has the benefit to bring us good things as well. It promises more time to spend on us so that we can do the things that matter to us by increasing productivity so that we can spend time with family, ignore them, and scroll on our phones. Our panelists today, we've been working on this since last month, maybe November, December. I started putting together this panel, just trying to find the folks that could speak to this topic and how AI is going to impact the workforce, not just Idaho, but everywhere. And I think we've compiled superstars, in my opinion. Everybody has just, they're stellar at what they do. And to that end, at the end, we have Jason Crawforth, who's the founder and CEO of Swear. We have Debbie Critchfield, who's the superintendent of public instruction for the Idaho Board of Education. We have Dr. Kimberly Gardner, Idaho Science and Technology Policy postdoctoral fellow, plus I think a few more credentials in there. Noah Riley, founder of AI Genius Automation, and our moderator today has promised to keep him in line, so I want everyone to, we need accountability. And then, of course, Craig Schall, research analyst, supervisor for Idaho Department of Labor. So I don't want to take up any more of your time. I would like to invite up to the podium Brad Fraser, who is a partner at Hawley Troxell, deeply immersed in the technology world as far as the legal aspects, and he will be your moderator today. So let's hear it for Brad and the panel.
Good morning and welcome. As Mark said, I'm Brad Fraser, a partner at Hawley Troxell, and I'm very pleased to join you as your moderator today. Mark is right. This is truly an august panel, and we have some interesting topics to share with you today. I will, because I'm an AI and copyright lawyer, I will just mention a couple of things in the AI space. First, there's a new piece of Idaho legislation on AI. The bill was just introduced in the last week, and if it passes, it will require you to let the public know when you're using AI in your marketing outreach as a form of false advertising. So watch that piece of legislation. I think it's House Bill 127. Keep an eye on that. There are three current pieces of Idaho law on AI. Believe it or not, Idaho has 3 on AI, and now there's a 4th that's been introduced, House Bill 127, so watch that. Some of you may have seen that the Copyright Office this last week made a pronouncement relating to the copyrightability of AI. That's a big topic for me, and so in that spirit, I invite all of you to come to our special event at the firm on February 20th in the morning. It's called Who Owns the Code in an AI World? It sounds like a coder thing, but it's really a much more broader discussion than that, much more broad discussion. So make a note if you're open on February 20th in the morning, come down to Hawley Troxell for a free breakfast and a discussion with me and Richard Hundhausen on who owns the code in an AI world. Lastly, I think I would just invite you to note that we're probably going to try to turn this over to questions around 9:30. So keep that in mind. We'll have the panel, and then we'll invite some questions from the audience around 9:30 this morning. All of you have encountered AI, and you've encountered AI for much longer than you know. You first encountered AI in 2007 when you spoke to Siri on your iPhone. Siri is AI. When you first told Alexa to play a song from your playlist, you encountered AI. Alexa's AI. Now it's become much more evolved, and particularly when ChatGPT broke everybody's mind in November of 2022, when we all saw ChatGPT. That's when we first really began to recognize AI as a construct, and that's why we have this panel today, is because it's changed so many of our paradigms and ways of thinking about productivity and creativity. So with that, let me ask each one of the panelists first, starting here with Craig. Do you use AI on a daily basis? And you can't say, yes, I use Siri on my iPhone. Do you use AI?
Well, then in that case, no. We don't use AI like as a, well, personally I don't use AI every day except for like Siri or what's embedded. But on occasion, like if I have to write something I just don't want to do, I just plug it into ChatGPT. Or like and this is actually where for the department, for my team, we have to do SQL code or we have to do programming and not necessarily. Thank you. Sorry. All right. Excuse me. So we're not exactly programmers, so especially the new people coming up. So it's a kind of a good training kind of shortcut to get those database queries. So to some extent, yes, but not we're not a deep power user by any means.
We know Noah uses AI. Noah, how do you use it every day?
I don't know what I do that doesn't use AI.
Right. That's a good response.
That's a long answer.
Dr. Gardner, how do you use AI in your personal career and in your organization? How do you use it today? Do you know?
Yeah, I think to kind of echo what Craig was saying, it's not like required in my job. I think if AI was like taken away from me, my job wouldn't change over much. But it's fun to use, and it's fun to play with and experiment with, and to see, what value can this tool bring to me, and how can it automate some of that boring stuff that I don't want to do, that I don't need to spend like emotional time on, or right. So I like to use it, and I do tend to try to use it actually as much as I can. Maybe not every day, but pretty often.
And Debbie, how about in your role? How do you use AI?
Well, personally, I think I'm like most of you, and I share Dr. Gardner. There's some fun things that you can do with it as far as asking questions. But as far as the education side, it is a very handy tool when I'm asked a question, particularly about something statewide in Idaho, or a comparison to something in education nationally. And in fact, yesterday morning, prior to a committee hearing in the House, I had a legislator text me and say, "Can you give me some quick information, quick stats about early reading on?" And I was thinking, quick, I was thinking, I know the person at my office that I could call, and then I thought, Chat GPT, and so I plugged that right in, and poof, there's some really important information that I knew to be true because I know what I'm doing, and so I could look at it and say, yes, this is actually indeed true. I feel comfortable sending it to someone.
Very good. And Jason, tell us how you use AI on a daily basis.
I'll just give a short example that just recently happened. After waiting 8 months for a professor to write a PhD level white paper on our technology, he decided to bow out. We used ChatGPT and Claude, our CTO and I did, and in a weekend we created a PhD level quality white paper that we can send to other PhD folks, and it created PhD level quality work.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's a great example, Jason, and we'll talk more later about how you use it at your company, Swear. Noah, could you give us a definition of artificial intelligence, please? We've seen many, but you work with it every day. What do you tell people artificial intelligence is in terms of a definition? Do you have a good one?
I would say the first thing that I usually tell people is that it's a tool. I highly encourage people to view it as a tool first, before you go on to the next parts of defining it. But like you said, AI's been around for a long time. It's been around since like the 60s. We've been developing deep learning algorithms and neural networks for a really long time. GPT is what made it popular because for three reasons. One was because it was generative. It was giving something back that we could understand. Two is that it was easy to use, so everybody got it. And also, this is one of the first times this has ever happened in like tech history that technology of this magnitude was dropped and the infrastructure was already in place to proliferate it globally instantly. That's never happened before. So that's what made it popular. So most of the time when people say the phrase artificial intelligence now, they're speaking about generative artificial intelligence, even though it's much broader than that. I would define it as being probably a tool or a technology that seems to be able to do things that we previously thought humans could do. And that is because of, in the background, technically, the deep learning neural network thing that's going on allows it to learn how to do tasks in a very similar way, at least how we think we learn things. The technology in the background, that's what it's doing. But that's kind of, is that good enough?
It's good. Like Jason's example, he wrote a PhD level dissertation that's mimicking human thoughts and processes, right? Okay.
It's anthropomorphized.
So would you say Microsoft Excel is a form of AI?
It uses AI. It itself is not AI. It has some AI capability in it, especially now, as Microsoft is aggressively trying to promote Copilot and imbuing it into all of its technologies.
And many of our people here today have probably read about DeepSeek. Do you have a thought on DeepSeek and what it is and its impact? I mean, it costs $5.6 million to spin it up, as opposed to $500 billion to spin up ChatGPT. What do you think about DeepSeek? Do you have a thought?
I don't use it. It's.
But he uses TikTok. Anybody see it? Irony there? I use TikTok, but I won't use DeepSeek.
Actually, I don't use TikTok, but I not because of the China thing. It's a little weird. I looked into it. I looked under the hood. I didn't like what I saw. I looked into the code. The public API is rerouting all the requests to a server somewhere that we don't know where it is. I don't like that. And they're publicly saying that it's this kind of it's revolutionary because our tiny little models can perform at the same level as like GPT or O1, but upon testing with my developers, that's not true in the slightest. It's only the big models, the ones that are too big to run on your computer, that get anywhere close, and they only get close. And this whole thing of like we're experiencing these large-scale malicious attacks, their site going down. It just is weird. It's fishy. I don't use it personally. I think it's like maybe sometimes as good as GPT. I don't really see a reason to like go down that path right now. I'm gonna take a look at it, but there's also been some articles that come out, and I haven't verified the information behind them that they have completely lied about how much it took to actually build it. It's in the billions.
Okay, thank you, Noah, for that insight. I appreciate that. Jason, you gave us one good use case of using an AI tool to create that PhD level dissertation. Tell us more about what you see of some of the good uses of AI, and then talk to us a little bit about what you've seen about the dark side of AI.
Oh, I only have, 5 minutes to answer that? I think that AI is like any technology. I mean, it is such a transformative technology. I think it's going to be bigger than the internet, and I had a very interesting conversation with a BSU professor who requires his first draft by his students to be done via ChatGPT or Claude. And it kind of was an eyebrow raise for me. I'm like, well, why are you doing that? And he says, because if they don't know how to use it properly, they're not going to be employable in the market. And it raised a lot of questions for me about, when do you allow things to be written for you? The reason I know how to write good, just kidding, the reason I know how to write well is because I have spent years of writing and figuring out why Microsoft Word does not like my sentences. And so I've gone through this iterative process. What I'm very curious about is like, would I have been a better writer earlier if I had actually been able to use AI tools? Like I write I'll write like a bio or write something, and I'll put it in ChatGPT and I'll just say, make this better. Yeah. And it does. Or I'm writing something and make this more persuasive. And it does. And it's like, it's better at writing than I am. And so I believe that there's good ways to augment what you're doing. The professor, I think, is a really interesting, concept, because he's trying to get them to learn how to use a tool that if they don't know how to use it, you will not be employable. And so he's making them more competitive in the market space. But like all technologies, there are dark sides. Like I'll just give an example. Humans invented a technology that kills 1.3 million people every year and maims 10 times that. Is that a good technology? It's the perspective. Okay, that's automobiles. Okay, we invented a technology that every 26 seconds someone is killed on this planet, and every few seconds someone's maimed. So, you look at it and it's like, well, what's the dark side of things? Yeah, there's the positive and negative. I think there's the negative aspect that I identified years ago is the ability to use AI to be able to fabricate content, meaning manipulate video, audio, and images. We've been in a world where, we've been enjoying the information age for 30, 40 years, and we use information to educate, to entertain, to influence. But you can also use disinformation to deceive, defraud, manipulate. And we're living in a society that the volume and the velocity of content that is thrown at us that we consume, that we don't bother fact checking, is amazing. And we like to read content that supports our narratives. And if you think fake news is bad, wait till you can't actually believe what you see and hear. When AI creates content that is imperceptible to humans. And I just want to give one example. About 7 years ago, Adobe created a tool that they never released. It was called Voco. They needed 30 minutes of your voice. And in 30 minutes, you'll make every sound in your native language. And they could piece together an audio recording of you appearing to say anything. admitting to a crime, an affair, a bribe, a racially charged comment. Okay, 30 minutes they needed your voice. How much time with AI do you think they need of your voice today?
2 seconds. 2 seconds.
3 seconds. Hi, you've reached my phone. I'm currently unavailable. That's all you need of my voice to have me say something that I didn't say. Not just how they map it to 80,000 other voices. And by the way, this is a Microsoft tool. This is one of many that are coming. This is the dark side of AI, is that it can be weaponized in a way. And for all the good that happens in the world, I love drawing analogies. We all drive about 500,000 miles during our life, but it's that 100 feet that we hit someone because we're looking at our phone. There is a consequence with technologies, and we need to be aware of that
Right.
for AI.
Thank you, Jason. This is why I'm glad I have a distinctive voice. Hard to replicate this. Listen, hard to replicate this, yes? Just saying. Craig, I hear all the time people call me and say, AI is going to take my job, Brad. What do I do? What's your perspective on that? What is your organization's philosophy on AI and its impact on the workforce?
That's a good question. That's something I've been looking at since ChatGPT landed on the scene, to be honest. And before I get too further, I have to issue a couple caveats here. I am not an expert on AI and its technology and how it gets employed. I know it's everywhere, and I can talk about it a little bit. But B, some of my answers may sound like I'm a Luddite, perhaps. I don't want to, but and then for that reason, I want to say for the future, I for one, welcome our robot overlords, just to have that on the record as well.
Always say please.
Because that's what I'm kind of serious about that to some extent, half joking. Because we're talking about the state of AI and technology and how it's going to affect the workforce as of January 2025. That conversation is going to be a lot different 2, 5, 10 years from now. And honestly, in thinking about this, I think we're kind of at the same point in that technology. Someone said it's kind of like the internet, but it's going to be bigger. I feel like we're at the dial-up stage for AI. And if anyone remembers that age where it's like, I got AOL online, I can just get online and hear the sounds, and I can talk to people in Australia, that type of thing. I think we're kind of at that similar stage where it's like we can do some really cool things with it, but what's coming is going to be absolutely frightening. That's my own personal. That's not the Department of Labor's official position. I just have to say that out. But in terms of how it affects the workforce, and how is it going to take jobs? Let me talk about how we get our data and one of the reasons it's kind of hard to answer that question and why I've been looking at this for 2 years, but I don't really have good information. Really, no one does yet. The way we collect data in terms of how it affects the labor market, we're looking at jobs, occupations, by industry and by who are doing what, right? We don't really get into the skills too much or tools and how that affects an occupation, if that's going to replace their job too much. That comes from other kind of research, but most of the stuff you see out there that's kind of cutting edge, no one really will admit if they're doing any kind of analysis on AI and how it's going to affect it, is saying there's not much data yet. And that's because it takes time for that data to get collected. And even so, if we do see some layoffs, and I suspect actually we're seeing some layoffs in the tech side, because that's really where the economic value proposition is for it, where you have programmers that are being paid 100 plus a year, if not more. You can reduce that footprint and save yourself millions of dollars right off the bat, just kind of because of what ChatGPT and these types of things can do. So, that's kind of an answer, but let me just say from what it's going to happen in 2025, one of the few things I found that's kind of recent is a report that the World Economic Forum published actually just last month. They've been kind of beating the drum with what they're doing, but again, it's just an estimate. But they're using some surveys of global employers, and 4 in 10 companies plan to cut jobs in 2025 due to AI. But what's interesting is, I say that's kind of scary, but when I say what's coming next in terms of where that's going to land, it all kind of makes sense. It's the same stuff that's been happening with automation for the past 2 decades. It's kind of switched a little bit, and it's going to accelerate. But the jobs that are going to be affected most for the coming year or for the next foreseeable future, the frontline job roles that are expected to see largest growth are actually farm workers, delivery drivers, construction workers, sales persons and food processing workers. Now notice I said growth because those are jobs that AI can't replace yet. There's automation machines, and that's really what I'm talking about 5, 10. Once AI gets married with robotics, that's where we're probably going to see more of this type of thing. We're going to see like jobs get kind of taken perhaps. Right now, I think what we're seeing is from an employer standpoint, this has the potential to be a very kind of productivity tool where it's like you can, again, have maybe one developer doing what used to be a team or an army perhaps. In addition, on the job seeker side, it's actually going to have kind of an interesting effect that's already been mentioned with being able to have ChatGPT write a PhD level white paper. It's actually going to level the field for some educational requirements. So like for someone coming into the job market that really can't write very well, now like that's not necessarily a requirement. They can use ChatGPT to do that. And that's, I mean, and believe me, I love art and I love literature, and I kind of feel like at some point, if everyone's just writing through ChatGPT, it's just going to be ChatGPT is going to be the sole author, which I kind of feel like it's going to have a confluence of language where it's just going to be everything's going to be ChatGPT language, which that's kind of my little concern. But I think what it does is, and this is one of those things where it's a genie's out of the bottle, you can't put it back. This is just what's coming. So you're going to have a labor force that may not even be literate too much, but can actually write pretty well using ChatGPT. So in terms of 2025 and the labor market and what jobs might get changed, that's sorry, asterisk here, and not to get a train wreck, but there's just so much that's happening with the labor market right now. So has anyone heard of what the demographic cliff? Raise your hands, the demographic cliff. If you haven't, that's another different answer. It'd take probably the entire time to talk about. Basically, there's a fewer amount of children and younger people coming to take the place of retired workers. And so you're going to be, if you think that it's hard for employers to get workers now, or are you walking into a shop or a store and it's just they don't have the people they need, to be honest, AI is, anyway, that's because there's just so fewer people coming into replacement. So we have this kind of upside down pyramid of demographics. So there's more people at the top, retired and older, versus people at the bottom to do jobs to support or produce goods that those people are consuming. And so to some extent, AI and robotics is kind of necessary, but then I'll kind of stop there with my answer because that opens up a whole nother kind of like dark dimension of where are we going with that. So.
That's good. Thank you, Craig. I've heard it said that AI won't take my job, but a human being who knows how to use AI will. That's a pretty good way to look at it, I think. I've asked the various AI tools for legal advice, Grok, Claude, ChatGPT. I've asked many of them for legal advice. So trust me, AIs give pretty good legal advice, but not great legal advice. So with respect, if you need a great legal advice, I would still invite you to ask a human, because it's pretty good, but it's not great. So let me move over to Debbie. Debbie, how is your office, your department, what are you advising both educators and students relative to the use of AI?
I'm going to bring a little positivity into this room. I feel like it's all been gloom and doom, and the world as we know it is ending. First of all, we want to make sure that our students, when they graduate, that they know how to do things, so that as they come and apply for jobs, AI is not masking an ability or an inability to do something that they can't do. We want to see and view technology as an additive to the skills and capabilities that our young people have. And that's the approach that we're taking. And we're not sure how this is all going to come together. But as we talk about it with our teachers who have questions, as you might imagine, we're also talking with our students. And Brad, I appreciate the line that you just used, because that's how I talk about AI with our teachers, the importance and really the urgency of how we incorporate this into our educational landscape. That AI isn't going to take the jobs of your students. Don't tell them that. Don't frighten them that way. But say it will replace the people. Or AI will, excuse me, now I'm getting it all twisted up. The people who do not know AI will be replaced by those that do. And so we start from that place. And we can do more, and we're going to do more on the pre-service end as our teachers in our colleges of education are being prepared. As one of my hats, I sit on the board, the State Board of Education, which is serves as the regents for all 4 of our public institutions. And so we're in a conversation right now with our college deans to say, what are some of the things that our teachers need to know right now getting into the classroom? And there are things that we can do for teachers that are already in the classroom, K-12, but what are we needing to change and adapt to on the pre-service end, recognizing that technology is going to be a huge part of this. And then also, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, I believe, later, what's our responsibility for our students in their education and an introduction to how they use it as a tool and how they incorporate that into their learning rather than as a substitute for what they don't know.
Thank you, Debbie. Dr. Gardner, how is workforce development working with educators, if it is, to integrate AI into future training models so that we have students who are graduating who are prepared to use AI tools? Is that part of your mandate?
So it's certainly something that we're doing. And I just have to say, I did not use chat to write my dissertation, but I think I would have finished a lot faster if I had.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
And, okay, so what is workforce doing? So I think the first thing that I got to thinking about with this question was, what is literacy? What does that mean and look like? Because we want to work with employers to train up our adults and our kids to have some kind of baseline AI literacy. So what does that look like? And I was thinking about, well, maybe it's actually a little bit more like reading and writing at this point. So because it's not like, like we've talked about before here already, AI tools don't just exist in like these jobs over here and those jobs over there aren't going to have AI. So if you don't want anything to do with AI, just get these jobs over here, right? They don't exist in these occupational boundaries. So everybody, in order to function well in society and in the workplace, is going to have some kind of baseline literacy in artificial intelligence, just like they need a baseline literacy in reading and writing, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that we think about. And the second thing that we think about is really, well, who are our educators? So we think of educators as our K-12 teachers. We think of educators as our, post-high school teachers and trainers. So we have our professors. We also have folks who train and teach our HVAC technicians, our plumbers, our electricians, our truck drivers, our cosmetologists, on and on, right? Those are important educators that we're working with right now. But also business owners are a key piece of who educators are. They are the ones who set expectations for how technology is going to be used and what skills they require. They also set data and technology norms and cultures within their organizations. And so we work with business owners as educators as well. So yes, we have a few programs, when we're thinking about that baseline literacy and what that looks like and who our educators are, we've got several programs that we're actually, that we're a part of right now. So the first thing that comes to mind is Idaho Launch, if anybody's heard of that. That's a program where we target a couple of different demographics, our adults and our graduating high school seniors. And that's funding that goes toward filling those skills that are in demand for Idaho's economy. So we want to make sure that we're training our adults and kids in those in-demand skills. And some of those skills do, fall under something that's like AI literacy. We also have another program where it's, we fund innovation and sectoral grants. And we've got one right now where we just funded some educators at Boise State University who are developing a curriculum training program for K-12 teachers to integrate AI tools in the classroom. So they're going to have their kids working with AI tools in the classroom, and the teachers are going to be learning how to use these tools at the same time, right? So that they can maybe lift some of the administrative burden of their job and actually spend more time with their kids. So yeah, lots of things going on.
That's encouraging. Thank you very much, Dr. Gardner. Just as a data point, I'm teaching a class at the law school this semester, and on day one, I was very upfront with the students. First, they are remarkably facile with AI. These are 20-year-olds in law school, 22-year-olds. They're all very facile with AI already, so good. And I was very candid with them. I said, use AI. Use AI in your role as a student here, but let's be upfront and candid about it. So use AI, but don't pretend that it's your own work product. And that seemed like a good compromise for a group of law students. So I'm glad to know, though, that we're integrating at that level as well, Dr. Gardner. Jason, let me go back to you. We've read a lot about AI and cybersecurity. We've read that AI can defeat firewalls, AI can crack codes, AI can defeat passwords, AI can generate known good Microsoft license keys. What do you think about the cybersecurity threats of AI? Since that's in your domain, Jason, what do you think?
So I was at a conference speaking with security professionals. It was a security and surveillance conference. And I had asked a room of about 200 people, by a show of hands, how many of you are utilizing AI to enhance your offerings to the end users? And so these are camera manufacturers, surveillance camera manufacturers, body cam, VMS systems. And about 80% of the room raised their hand when it came to that. And it was more for like pattern recognition, facial recognition, object recognition, to try to reduce exposure to whichever their client. Client would be Disney with 60-some thousand cameras. Then I asked the room, how many of you are developing technologies to defend against AI? 0 hands went up. And I think that when you look at something like cybersecurity, there's a lot of things that are happening all at once. And it's AI and quantum computing. Quantum computing, just in China, they recently just hacked RSA encryption. Not at scale yet, but all the public-private keys, the encryption that we have going on that we've relied on for financial transactions, that's being cracked not just by AI, but by quantum. This is a 1-2 punch that we have to start paying attention to, not just as organizations and agencies, but as individuals. This becomes very, very personal when I'm starting to read articles where there's people that are calling up, hi Dad, I'm in the hospital, I've had a bike crash, I don't have any ID, can you give me your credit card? I tested my dad on this. I said, what would you do? He says, I would give you my credit card. I said, no. I said, what you need to do is you need to ask me an analog question. And this is important because I want to really make this personal. People talk about creating like a safe question. An analog question is like, hey Jason, what was the name of the neighbor's dog that used to dig underneath the fence and bark all the time and come to our back door? Well, that's not on the internet. I know that's Ginger. Okay, so there goes one of my safe questions. And so I said, if you ask me that question and I can't answer that, then just hang up the phone. I've talked to my parents about, and this is a cyber. If you see a phone number that you don't recognize and you're not expecting a call, answer it and hang up. He says, well, what if it's important? I said, and it's legit. I said, they'll call you back.
Right.
So you need to, cybersecurity starts at the individual level. And then it starts to go into enterprise, the way that we handle and manage data, breaches of data. And, we've grown up in an era where we trust. Used to be, when Walter Cronkite told you something, you believed it. Okay. As we've gone along, now we moved into trust but verify. Well, now with all the media and all the different and news, and I'm air quoting news, I want everyone to know I'm air quoting news on some of these people that say they're news. Doesn't matter your political persuasion, there's a lot of garbage out there, and you cannot trust but verify. You need to not trust and then verify.
Right.
And this goes to all aspects in our personal and our professional life. I think I answered your question in there somewhere.
Thank you, Jason.
But,
yeah, that was very good. Thank you. It's funny, our safe word with our daughter is also a dog-related question. So if you will have dog-related safe questions with your kids, I guess we need to change them. I guess. So Craig, if you were talking to a group of 18-year-olds and you were advising them on AI proficiency, what would you tell that group of 18-year-olds in terms of career prep and AI proficiency? You have some thoughts on that?
I do, and let me preface that by saying if I was with that group of the 18-year-olds, and I'd given my previous answer, I'd first explain, before I say this one, is that the economics is a dismal science, so we're always looking at scarce resources, that type of thing. Also, I'm a big portent of doom guy, so take that into consideration with that previous answer as well. But I think for the advice for the 18-year-olds, I think, and I think some of the answers before kind of highlight this is that AI again is at present time is a tool that people can use, but you can't just let it run wild. It still takes an individual to impute what it is you want, and then it takes an individual to evaluate that response back and make changes or get another one before incorporating that into the actual product or whatever the task is. So because of that, I mean, really, to be honest, the same requirements for an 18-year-old going into the workforce is the same as they've been, which is you have to have a well-rounded education to understand, again, to kind of like what is going to pass the smell test. If I'm looking at something and it's not well written, why isn't it well written? If I'm asking for it for specific technical data and it's spitting something out, I need to be able to know where to go to and figure out that's right. And for instance, I've actually plugged in, tell me the unemployment rate of a county in Idaho, and sometimes it gets a county in Washington, and then it doesn't know, right? It doesn't know that it has the wrong answer. It just gives you something, and then you tell it, no, that's not right. Oh yeah, that's right, that's true. I didn't give it that. You're right. That's not the correct county in Idaho. So. So really, one of these things, and again, some of these previous answers building on some of those is, this is information that isn't new. We've been talking about automation, machines, algorithms taking jobs for the last decade plus. In fact, there's some really good research that MIT economists did, David Otter. There's an Oxford study from Frey and Osborne that kind of looks at the automation of the susceptibility of automation of U.S. jobs, and the reason they use U.S. jobs is because we're the ones that have ONET that can kind of talk about that. ONET is, by the way, is a database, and you can get to it for free. ONET, just type in ONET, and it gives you like the occupations and demands and the skills that go with that, and those type of things, which is why they could use it. But basically, and that, they had in 2015, when 2014, when they released this research, it was 54% of U.S. jobs could be automated in the next decade. We're at 2024 now, so we're a decade on. AI was not really a factor in that, so that's a new technology, so actually probably a higher percentage now. But really, it's again, like what Kimberly was saying, it's not just in terms of what an 18-year-old should look at going forward, and I've actually advised the people going to economics degrees to do this. It's not a matter of just knowing, like being literate. It's not a matter of knowing the numbers and being able to do the math. You have to understand how to use the digital aspect of that. So digital literacy that goes with it, and now AI literacy. So that would be my advice for 18-year-olds.
Thank you, Craig. I have one more question for Noah, one for Dr. Gardner, and then one for Debbie, and then we'll probably be ready to open it up to group Q&A. Debbie, I understand, needs to leave us at about 9:30. Is that true? Okay, so we may not have a chance to address audience
AI
questions.
for the legislature.
Okay.
I would say
Is that a fact? That's interesting. What are you going to say?
Could you? I said,
Yes,
could you figure out?
Okay. So Noah, before the session, Noah and I were talking about the C-suite and how 20 years ago we had no CISOs. There were no chief information security officers 20 years ago. There just weren't. And so I said, so Noah, when will we see in the C-suite a CAIO? Right? Noah would be a great CAIO. And so, Noah, imagine that you're the CAIO of a large company. What are the 3 AI tools you're going to invite that client or that your company to implement first? Do you have a 3 favorite lists that you tell your clients that they should certainly probably have in the workforce?
Well, what I would tell a client versus what I would implement in a C-suite is different, because the tools themselves it's about the problem you're solving, not about the tool. I don't want a hammer just because it's a hammer. I want it because I need to, put nails into a piece of wood, right? Mm-hmm. So, in general, if I'm talking to a client, especially if they have very little exposure or not a lot of experience with AI, I usually direct people to ChatGPT. I like to tell people go deep, not wide. You'll waste a lot of time jumping from tool to tool, and like any skill, you lose a lot when you don't go deep, because you need to understand the concepts. You need to understand what AI is actually good at, what its capabilities are. Once you understand that, you'll actually have a conceptual framework with which to judge other AI tools. And if you're jumping around, it's really difficult to develop that framework. So usually I would say go GPT, because it's still, in my opinion, at the top of almost all metrics in all of its capabilities. And it's one of the cheapest ones that you're going to find that does so much. It does a lot that people don't know that it does.
Good.
So in terms of administrative, creative, being able to store projects, work on a canvas, edit code, create documents, all these things that other companies are spinning up, that are just like a one-off. They're just like one feature of ChatGPT, and they charge the same price. I was like, just Don't go off into wherever land and your friend's like, oh, I saw this cool tool. I'm like, I'm paying, but I met somebody one time.
That's good advice because there's so many. It's tempting, isn't it, to go and
no,
try all the
it's
different
just
tools? Yeah.
Understand its capabilities, right? I know GPT is kind of like if you're a technology hipster, you want to go use the one that nobody's using. Don't just use use GPT and get good at it. Get really good at it, and then branch out and experiment. I would say that was like it's a good mainstay for a middle of the road thing. For content creation, I would say Midjourney. If you're looking at images, Midjourney and Recraft, those two are. Yeah, that'll handle pretty much all of your content creation. Midjourney is significantly better with image creation than GPT. So for like a content creation toolkit, I would go there. And then, I don't want to muddy the water. I think those are
Good.
I think those are three good.
That's a good
tools.
answer, Noah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me go over to Debbie, and then we'll come back to Dr. Gardner. Debbie, do you find any situations in which students have surpassed their teachers in terms of AI proficiency? I mean, if I'm a 50-year-old 7th grade teacher and my students come on to class and they have much better AI proficiency, where does that leave me? Are you seeing anything like that? And what are you doing to address that?
I think the difference is that our young people are less afraid of using it. And so I would say that they have a slight edge on the adults in the room, not because they aren't familiar or interested, but they're more scared about using it. Where a student is like, let's dive in. We don't know what's legal, unethical. All the things are like, let's just use it. Here's a fun thing. Whereas adults are a little more disciplined about, should I? Those ethical questions of, well, if I have ChatGPT write whatever, can I really put my name on it? And the kids are like, heck yeah, I can put my name on it. So I want to say something about that, because one of the things that I think we do worry about, I don't know on the PhD side, but I can confidently tell you that teachers know their students. If they're a student who has demonstrated their writing abilities in other ways, turns in a paper that does not fit anything else. So teachers tell me all the time, we know the difference, because they know their student. And so they're able to say, yeah, you didn't write this. And so I don't know on the higher ed side how all that works through, but I can tell you I hear that across the board from teachers, because parents will say, well, what if they're turning in homework that's not theirs, or some of these things. Teachers know what their students' abilities are. And I feel like I've buried the lead on something here, but in the middle of this legislative session, I'm recommending that our legislature add a digital literacy graduation requirement for our young people, for all of the reasons that we're talking about here. And I've had some legislators approach me and say, well, is this just internet safety? Can't you just have a assembly on that? Can't you? No, we're not talking assembly. We're actually talking about being a critical consumer, scrutinizing that critical thinking part that you referred to, that you see things, but is it true? And I think of one of our responsibilities in education, if not the only responsibility, is to produce functioning adults that can take care of themselves and contribute to their community, and that can think about the information that's in front of them. And we're at a time where I think if we don't get in front of it right now, I don't want to be catching up in Idaho. And so I would really encourage you to reach out, if you feel strongly about it, reach out to your legislator and ask them to be supportive of adding this requirement to our students. Again, across the state, all students in Idaho high schools would have to take this course in order to graduate. And we're developing a list of what those standards would be. I would love to reach out to this group. And I was taking notes as you're saying, we really want, this, that, or the other to be a part of what our students know. We have an opportunity right now to create what that is, and then come back to it. It has to be, I think, very alive and dynamic, so that we're coming back and saying, yeah, well, 5 years ago, those three things mattered. We don't care about those things anymore. What do our students need to do? So that's my plug, and it's not my plug for me, but honestly, it's my plug for our kids in Idaho, that we lead out in the nation on some of these things.
That's a great answer. Thank you. I know that there is, for the first time, an AI subcommittee in the legislature, and I know that the co-chair is Representative Jeff Ehlers, Ehlers. And so if you have a mind to do so, in addition to what Debbie suggested, we know that there is a committee, and Representative Jeff Ehlers is the co-chair of that committee on AI. Let me go back to Dr. Gardner. What are you seeing, if any, differences between the private sector and the governmental sector in terms of the use and adoption of AI tools? Are you seeing anything in that realm?
I think we're probably, we have a pretty good understanding of more of the same. So I think I can say things like in a very broad general sense, which is in terms of like lawmaking and adoption of AI. So when it comes to lawmaking and legislation, policy lags innovation. I mean, that is a truth for all ages, right? Government institutions, bureaucracies aren't exactly designed and built with agility in mind to radically changing circumstances, and in many cases that's probably a good thing. Sometimes it's frustrating, and it's also the case, right, that our legislators cannot be expected to know everything about everything. So the level of understanding for certain topics like artificial intelligence probably isn't going to be as nuanced as the folks who are immersed in these kinds of things. So, and in terms of adoption, I think at least in state government, we're at this stage of bring your own AI to work. So, right, there's a spectrum of reactions to innovations and new technologies. Some of us are quick adopters. We immediately recognize the utility of a tool and we take it up. Or maybe we don't recognize the utility, but we're like, this is a fun new toy, and we start playing with it, right? Some of us are indifferent, can't be bothered, and some of us are sort of doomsdayers. There's a wide spectrum.
I'm also writing a book.
And so depending on who those folks are within state governments, if you're a fast adopter, you've already adopted AI and you're already using it in state government for your job to make things easier. If you're indifferent or hostile to it, you're probably not using it. So, but we don't have a lot of hard data on this yet. Okay. We're still in the information gathering stage. Our own IT agency just completed a survey of how AI is being used in state government, so it's going to be interesting to go through those results. And so, yeah, I think that in a very general sense, government is probably lagging the private sector in the use and adoption of AI, but just a couple of exceptions here. And I'll just kind of echo what you were saying earlier, is that the user experience of chat, it's different than other innovative technologies that have come out. It's amazing when you like listen and wait for somebody to say, who's not adopted it yet, to be like, oh, I wish this task I could do it faster. And you're like, let me show you something cool. And you're like, then they're like, well, how do I use it? You're like, just ask it a question, like it was me. Just ask it a question. And they type in their question, and then they see the cascading result down the screen, and they're like, oh, whoa, right? And you're like, that's the moment, right? So I think that chat maybe is a little bit different, right, than other technologies. So it's the gateway drug. It totally is. So maybe we don't know exactly how fast state agencies are adopting, because you have a lot of people who are like, whoa, this is cool, I'm going to use it now. And then in terms of the private sector, something else that maybe complicates the story a little bit is that opportunities and challenges for AI adoption are going to be different with a large business versus a small business. Again, we don't have a ton of information on these opportunities and challenges. Idaho Workforce Development would love to learn more about the challenges specifically for small businesses in Idaho with adopting artificial intelligence, and what potentially a role might be as like a support partner for, you're laughing.
I mean, this is my world, like business and AI and all the things you're talking about.
We should talk more then.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's terrific, Dr. Gardner. I appreciate that. I understand this is the time now. We'll turn it over to audience Q&A. Is that right, Mark? Well, Cindy has the microphone, so if any of you have a question for our panel, put up your hand when Cindy says so, and we will allow you to ask the panel a question.
And I know Debbie has to go. Debbie, thank you so much. Let's give her a round of applause. I know your schedule is very busy, always, but more impacted the first of the year. So thank you for taking the time, Debbie, and sharing your knowledge with us today. We have a question right here.
First, I want to say I use chat, so I'm not a doomsdayer. I like it. During the World Economic Forum, there was information that came out that they are rolling out the ability to go back and monitor brain waves and do predictive behavior. And so my question is what's the impact for employees' rights and justice?
Why are you all looking at me? Well, I don't know. I've not seen any case law in the United States on that specific issue. But it's a good question, and I guess I would have to give you the lawyer answer. It depends, right, on the particular facts. But regrettably, I'm not aware of any specific case law or legislation, which is what lawyers look to help us answer questions like that. And that's probably not a satisfactory answer, but we're just working in a time of much grayness on anything related to judicial or legal pronouncements around AI, and that sounds like one of those things. So maybe I haven't understood the question, but that's really the best thing I can say right now.
Aaron, yes?
Yes, please. Thank you. All right, I'm a little sad that Debbie's not still around for this. So, Jason was talking about a PhD level paper, and then Craig was talking about people that can't write as well are going to be at less of a disadvantage. Debbie was talking about trying to avoid having AI mask learning. And then Dr. Gardner was talking about, literacy in AI is going to be like literacy in reading and writing. So one of the things that I've heard out there, and I wish that I had references for this, but this is just off the top of my head, but people have talked about writing being a part of thinking, and talking about, how much linguistics are a part of thinking, and that people who can't write well can't think well. So one of the kind of this leads up to the question that think will be the impact of AI on critical thinking in individuals.
I'm happy to start that. So the impact of AI on critical thinking and writing and things like that. So one of the things that we hope does not happen, we hope it will not have a negative impact, obviously. I think I share Craig's concern that the more we rely and become dependent on AI tools for things like writing and thinking for us, that doesn't bode well. So, we want to use AI in the humanities, in writing and thinking, critical thinking, as something that augments what we should be doing as human beings. So that framework really needs to be taught. Those expectations need to be set starting in kindergarten, right? Which is why we're talking so much about what literacy looks like with AI. So I think those are just some initial thoughts.
I want to add a little bit onto that. By a show of hands in the room, how many people have used microfiche? Okay, so that's the Gen Xers and older. So it used to take us, think back to the time when we were in high school, and if I had to find out the current population or the most recent population of Madagascar from this point, and there was no internet, how long would it have taken me? Okay? Now, hey Siri, what's the current population of Madagascar?
As of 2024, the population of Madagascar was 31,964,000.
Okay, so have I lost critical thinking because of that? No. Now, if I fought against that and I kept going to the library and the Dewey Decimal System and relying on those librarians that how the hell they knew all that stuff was amazing. But what it does is that the technology, the invention of the internet allowed people to accomplish more quicker. This is the next iteration of that. And I do have a view towards the negative aspects of things when it comes to AI, but there's a lot of positive that we can do. It doesn't make people less, I believe, less critical thinkers. I think it allows them to advance quicker if they use the tools in the right way. Now, I didn't validate that that's the proper population of Madagascar. If I'm putting together a paper, I'm going to see where they got the data. But I know. So I think that we need to be cautious of that. One other thing I just want to add in, I don't know, I don't think is going to ask the question, is you have to understand the limitations of AI. When ChatGPT came out in late 2022, they had the purest form of the internet. And what do I mean by that? That all the content that it combed through was created by humans. Today, in fact, Europol, that the European Union's equivalent, I don't know if the FBI, CIA, they're estimating that over 90% of content will be synthetic by 2026, meaning it will be partially or fully created by AI. So now when you do more research, now it's coming through AI-created content that was not created by humans and may not have been fact-checked. We have to understand some of the limitations that and I think that as we've all used, the more used AI, you will see things that are false. Like I looked up my company on ChatGPT, and the unpaid version, because I want to see what it has, it thinks that my company is about creating swear words. Okay? Because it hasn't updated itself. And so the information is wrong. Go search for information. And I think that that's what we have to do with people, that we are literally at the dial-up. I love that analogy. We're at the dial-up point of AI. We need to encourage people to use it, the younger people, but we need to use it in the right way. I think that what the professor at BSU is doing is having them, use ChatGPT for the first draft, and that they just don't put it in there and give it to them. They're massaging it. They're like, hey, give me the facts on this stuff, and he's teaching them how to do that. We have to use that. This is out of the box. It's not going in, and if you don't want to adopt it, you can be just like my parents that were the last ones to have smartphones, that they were the last ones to really adopt the internet. My mom was a great beta tester for all my products, because if my mom knew it, anyone could figure it out. Now my mom is more sophisticated and she's lost her job as my tester. but it took time, it took time to do that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I would love to touch on this one.
Please. Yeah.
I get this a lot.
Please.
A lot. This type of inquiry. I guess the first principle that I think of when people bring this kind of thing up is that the percentages don't change. I think to your point, it's not the tool. I don't walk by a tool and become less intelligent because a tool exists. My ability to use it is, not affected by its existence. And what I mean by that is, I did a presentation one time at a Rotary Club, and one of the older gentlemen stood up after the presentation, and he said, when I was in school, everybody knew how to do math, and I was like, and then the calculator came out. Now no one knows how to do math. He's like, what is AI going to do to? And he had tears in his eyes. And to me, this is a very human issue that's kind of separate from the technology. Like, he was seeing a world that was showing him that all the things that he had learned in his life and that were important to him and were told to him were important and invested time and sweat and energy into are now becoming less important. You are becoming less important. You as an entity are becoming less valuable on this planet. And I think that's one thing that is really scary for people about AI. But we don't have, if you're the person who Googles something and you believe the first result that pops up, you're the same person who's going to get fooled by AI. You're the same. If you don't fact check your information before, you're not going to start fact checking your information now. It has nothing to do with the technology. The technology doesn't make you dumb. You could say like that, the thing that I said to the guy, he's like, no one knows how to use calculators. And I was like, can you use a calculator to do elliptical calculus? And he was like, what? And I was like, exactly. And I was like, the same thing with AI. Like, is it going to make us bad writers? I mean, I personally, there are two effects as far as my literacy or two skills that I've gained. One is I've become a better writer using GPT because I'm learning from how it responds to me when I ask it, how can I write this better? And I'm like, why was that better than what I wrote? I'll ask it, and then it'll explain. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Another weird thing is that because I use the voice command so often, I enunciate more clearly when I speak. So I can understand what I'm saying.
It's great. It's great.
And there's just a lot of if you were that person before, if you were lazy before, if you were cheating before, you're still a lazy cheater. And AI doesn't make you all of a sudden more people are become lazy cheaters. If you already had that disposition, then you'll continue to have that disposition. That's a human value thing. That's your own morality. That's your own motivation. It has nothing to do with technology. You can't do what I can do with AI because it takes a lot of time, effort, and skill. This is still difficult to do difficult things. And so I think the overarching principle is if you were one of those people, you will remain one of those people. If you want to do better, then do better. And I was and if you think you can do more, then do more.
And I think Craig had a quick response to that as well. Craig?
Yeah, not to be more portent to doom here, but I like your aspect of the language question. I share that concern. I feel that this is one of those tools where it allows people to save a lot of time, to just skip over some hard work. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is the differences in languages. Language is identifying. That's you identify yourself through the words you use and through the language you've learned to use. And what's interesting is one of my concerns with AI, and obviously once it's fully functional, who knows what happens, but a customer service rep, that's in front of you at a hotel, that type of thing. And that's happening in Japan already, so I'm not sure why I use that. But my concern is in the Japanese aspect, I'm concerned that when people travel, they won't understand the differences in languages and how those identities differ. For instance, if anyone has taken Japanese, there is not a present tense in the same way as there is in English, and that creates some differences in how people speak. In addition, they are not direct in the way Americans are in terms of English. There's a kind of if you ever watch NHK and the guy is saying something, it takes him forever and it's just 2 words in English, it's because he's leading up to it. There's an indirect aspect to that speak, and it's also into the culture. I suspect, I don't know where that's going to go to the extent the tool itself is the tool. The genie's out of the bottle. I don't know where it's going to go, but those are the kind of things I'm worried about where that goes long term.
Thank you. I'm going to do my best to get through. We've got Shantae, you still have a question? Yeah, one in the back and then one here. And then as we wrap up, feel free. It's an intimate setting. Feel free to approach the panelists if you have a question that we don't get to. So.
Thank you. Good morning. Shantae Winner with Mountain West Bank. Thank you so much, everyone, for the inspiring, kind of scary engagement. Love it. And Jason, particularly as a banker. Check fraud is rampant, but the level of fraud from what you're saying with the AI is legit, and it happens in Idaho, and none of us are immune. So thank you for that PSA, because it is very important that we educate our children and ourselves and our grandparents and our parents of that. My question is, a year ago, I was sitting on something similar, an AI conversation, large group, not really hearing about your voice messages, and I'm not able to ask this question, but it scared me, and so I immediately changed we all have cell phones, immediately changed my cell phone to generic. Felt so impersonable, and it doesn't feel like the core of who I am, but thought, oh my gosh. So that's where my question lies is, maybe there's no way to mitigate this. Maybe that's what it is. But should we be changing our voice messages? Should we not be posting videos of our voices and our kids' voices and sharing things? That doesn't feel authentic, and maybe it is what it is and we can't mitigate it. But how can we keep ourselves safe in an everyday world?
Jason?
Do we want to start with Mr. Doom and Gloom, or there's so
He's writing a book.
With ChatGPT.
While they're thinking, just a lawyer's perspective, I haven't done any of that, because if somebody does that, I'll just sue them. Quite frankly, I will, right? But that's not everybody. So there may be a more practical answer than just if somebody steals my stuff, I'll just sue them. But there may be a better, more practical answer up here.
I would just say, not doom and gloom, but I think there's safety in numbers to some extent, so that everybody's doing it. I don't think you have to, unless you have some sort of arch rival out there that's like, oh, now I've got ChatGPT. I think that's the current of the social zeitgeist. So I don't think that's necessarily a concern in that way. So that's my one. I mean, I'm going to end it before I go down the portent of doom route there. So
I would kind of echo that. I don't know. I'm pretty. I think both of us are pretty deep into like the background of the technology itself. You can't protect yourself from that. I could have been recording this. I can go back and watch a recording of this and clone your voice. Exactly. I could take your image off of a picture and make an avatar of you. There's nothing you can do. You will not be able to stop that from happening. Like, it's not going to stop. So, I think, like, the idea of getting really, really scared about that is, I don't think we should be afraid. I think we should be curious. Bad people do bad things. They've always been doing that. You can use a hammer to build a house, and you can use a hammer to kill someone. And these technologies, I think, are going to, the amplitude wave is equal in both directions as far as like the positivity and negativity. And so I like the power in numbers idea. I like the idea of us kind of, the people who have those kind of concerns, banding together in some sense and creating some kind of an environment. We just don't know what ways there will be to validate or defend, except for his technology.
So it's a great question. Am I scared? Oh, of course I am. I'm all over social media as well. There's going to be a progression that's going to happen. It's going to get bad, and then most of us are going to start to realize that a lot of false things are out there. So if you look at what's the way that we fight against misinformation, there's 4 ways to do that. The first is education. It's a long, slow process. As I said earlier, people will believe their own narratives. It's easier to fool someone than it is to fooled. Okay? Education is just going to have to keep happening. The second is legislation. And yes, it is a slow process. The EU is way ahead of us, and they're a lot more progressive. But it's a slow process. The third way is defensive solutions, that we try to use technologies to identify and discredit stuff as fake, whether it's images or video or text. It's a lot of processes. People are developing AI tools that go out and determine that that's AI generated or that's fake. The fourth is what I think is the best tool is to go on the offense, is to guarantee that something is real, that it's original, and I think that's where technology is going to go, and we have a ways to go. As we map the DNA of every frame, of every pixel and soundbite of a video in real time, you can't change a single pixel of our content without it being detected. Not today, not 10 years from now, not 30 years from now. It's impossible. It's mathematically impossible. We're AI resistant and quantum resistant, and we've been focusing on this for over 8 years to build this technology to kind of be a counterpunch to disinformation. And I think that we as individuals are going to have to learn to, when I say, to not trust and verify, I don't mean that, because you're still going to have trusted sources. And they're going to be more diligent about guaranteeing that the content that they're producing is authentic, because their reputations depend on that. I'm not talking traditional media. I'm talking about influencers. I think more people are. I have influencers that I've stopped following because I'm like, okay, your stuff's crap. So I think that you, as an individual, right now you're not a high-value target. Okay. You will be, but right now they're going after the influencers, whether they're politicians, whether they're social media, whether they're sports athletes or they're movie stars. They're going after them. And that will, the whole thing with Taylor Swift that happened this last year. It's like people are like shocked, clutch my pearls type of moment. But it's like that stuff's going to happen more and more, and that's going to gain the awareness of people that have legislative power and the power of pen and technologists. They're going to be developing technologies to fight against that. But we should be aware that when look, we all know every image we see has been modified. It's been cropped, it's been enhanced, it's been fixed. But we don't naturally look at something and say, oh, well, that's real, unless it clearly has blemishes and it's real, or we took it. Video is going to be the same way, that we're going to have to look at that and say, well, that's a good chance that that's not real. Where did it come from? And I think that, the pendulum has swung. There's a swath of our world that thinks the media is not to be trusted. Okay, well, if you don't trust the media, then who are you going to trust? Joe sitting in his mama's basement, doing his podcast. That stuff it's gonna go back the other way. It's just going to take time, but people are going to have to validate the authenticity of the data and where it comes from. And it's, in the meantime, we're going to have to be careful. I mean, someone's going to fake me. I mean, I'm going to be ground zero because I'm creating technology to fight against it. And so when you hear that I've done something nefarious or something really off color, don't believe it. That's not me. Okay? I mean, all I'm thankful for is that the internet wasn't around in my early 20s, because those awkward dumb years are not documented. So
Thank you, Jason. We have a question here. I'm going to try to get to yours. I know your hand's been up for a while, and then we'll probably wrap that up.
Yeah, this one's for Noah real quick. Earlier you said you suggest to people just, go get good at ChatGPT. Basically, dive in and start getting better, kind of using that muscle, so to speak. For the professional who's perhaps a novice at ChatGPT, can you give a couple of quick examples of what you mean when you say, hey, just go get good at, start using that, exercising that muscle?
Yeah. Step one, use the paid version. I'm serious. Don't cheap out on it. It's worth $20 a month. Even if you try it for 1 month, like use the paid version, the difference in the features is quite large between the paid and the free version. When you get in there, click all the buttons, all of them. See what they do. Find forums, find things people are, there are all kinds of people who are posting content about stuff they're doing with ChatGPT. You can find kind of communities of people who are sharing the kind of stuff that they're doing. But I think you learn more and more and more by just going in there and type a thing, even ask it, what can you do? Or can you help me with this or whatever? And it will just continuously iterate and iterate and iterate, and you'll see more and more and more of what it can do. I encounter this a lot with people who aren't deep into tech. They won't click a lot of the buttons. But that's how the apps do what they do. So if you go in there and literally just start clicking all the things, there's projects and there's Canvas, and what does that mean? It would make more sense to actually just click it and see what happens when you do. It's pretty intuitive. And I think my second piece of advice around that would be bring an actual problem, and then you'll see, I think, a little more specificity with what you can and can't do with it. Say okay, I have this is something that's really annoying to me. Can I use GPT to do this? And then you start to find kind of its limitations or what it's good at, what it's bad at. That would be my advice. Is that a good? And then Aaron held up a little note here. Said opt out of sharing. you can in your profile settings you can turn off the ability for a GPT to train on your data, but it also turns off saving your chats, which is really annoying. So I would only turn it off if you're putting in data that you don't want the model to train on.
Also know that whatever you prompt loses confidentiality. So think about that. So whatever you prompt is no longer a trade secret. Whatever you prompt is no longer confidential. You might have violated an NDA. So think about the downstream consequences of the fact that whatever you prompt is no longer confidential. That's a big deal. Okay.
And if you need help, you can always ask a fifth grader, right? We determined that as well. We're going to take one last question. I know your hand's been up for a while, and then we'll just do some closing remarks.
So this is probably a quick one because it's basically just a finer point of what you just said. But so I'm an auditor, which means I'm probably at risk of AI not taking my job, but gobbling most of my job. So aside from maybe following in Brad's footsteps and just specializing, just being an AI auditor, and learning the tool, what else can I do to kind of future-proof my career that I'm not left, I don't know how I'm paying my mortgage this month.
I would go into ChatGPT and ask if I'm an auditor, what skills do I need to have to AI-proof my career? Seriously.
Go get a degree in prompt engineering. I mean, that's a thing now. right? Just, yeah, go get a 2-year degree at CWI or someplace in prompt engineering. There you go.
We have some CWI representatives back there.
CWI has a degree in prompt engineering. I know this.
Also, this is, and I'm kind of sorry to stomp on. I didn't want to stomp on it. You said it, but I'm going to rephrase it. The whole thing of, because I hear this all the time, like, AI won't take a job, but somebody who knows how to use AI will. No, AI will take your job, and somebody who knows how to use AI will. And I know this because I'm in the space, and people are building technology that's displacing thousands of workers at a time, like that. Because when people realize, it's like any technology. Could you say that, like, if you were a saddle maker, that when the car came out, you're like, I'm safe. Like, someone who, I'll be fine. Like, well, will you? I think it's really, really important, and I think it's really intelligent of you to understand your exposure. Like, what is your exposure? And the first step that I would do is to go use the tool to see what it's capable of. Once you know what it's capable of and then start to see where it's going, you'll understand more about what your exposure is, because you might be able to use it to augment your abilities in ways that it can't currently do, which raises your value. And then as you continue to go through the process, you learn what you need to learn to reskill or upskill to remain employable, or if you want to change fields. I was in graphic design when GPT hit the scene, and I pivoted because I saw that how much exposure I had in my field. That's why I got into this. So I think it's really smart.
Okay, Cindy, back to you, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I was just going to ask if you had any last comments
I do.
before.
I have
Okay,
a
yes.
question, but please, just hands up. How many of you have written, implemented, and enforced an AI usage policy in your workplace for both employees and independent contractors? Please, written, implemented, and enforced an AI usage policy for employees and independent contractors. Hands up, please.
Us personally or our company?
Your companies. Well, you can see we have a little work to do there. I would invite all of you to make that a priority, frankly. I really would. Okay, may I just, and I also leave you with a little bit of homework. Trust me on this. I used to read a lot of science fiction when I was a kid. Go out and find and read this weekend a short story by Isaac Asimov called The Last Question. Write it down. The Last Question, Isaac Asimov. And when you read that, your heads will go, trust me, just trust me. It's like a half-hour read for fast readers. Okay, Last Question, Isaac Asimov. Cindy, I think we are officially done, or shall I turn it back over to you?
Yeah, that's great. Brad, thank you. Let's give Brad a round of applause. And the panelists. You're super tall. Okay. Incredible information today. Thank you so much to all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules and being here with us, and all of you for showing up and learning just a little bit more. Thank you so much. The Breakfast Series report that you heard today will publish in the February 14th edition of the Idaho Business Review. The recording from today's event will be on our website on the 14th as well. So thank you again to our Breakfast Series presenting sponsor, Hawley Troxell, and supporting sponsor, Bank of America. And a special thanks to the Better Business Bureau and Mike and the Hemlock at In at 500 for their partnership and incredible hospitality. Let's just give a final round of applause to all of our sponsors and partners. Coming up, we have a couple events. Our second annual Empowering Women Awards program is on March 13th, and we hope you can join us at that event, where we are going to be recognizing companies that support and elevate women in the state of Idaho. And then we hope you'll return for our April 17th breakfast series, Business View on Legislation. I anticipate a packed house. It was last year. And there's a lot going on at the Capitol right now. So April 17th at the Grove Hotel. If you'd like more information about the 2025 Breakfast Series or Idaho Business Review, please visit our website at idahobusinessreview.com. With that, I want to thank you all for being here today. Thanks to the panelists. Thanks, Brad. Make it a great day, and we'll see you next time.